I was 7 years old when the '67 war broke out. We lived 200 yards from the demilitarized zone towards the Jordanians in Derech Hebron and Machane Allenby. And as a young child, I remember how dysfunctional the city was. Our neighborhood was bombed and shelled. Some of the neighbors were wounded. I remember filling sandbags for the soldiers just before the war. And then when the war was over, I remember the big adults, the adults crying from joy, and I couldn't understand why the hell people are crying when we won the war. And I remember that I decided then as a young child to be a paratrooper myself, and indeed that's what happened, because I saw what the paratroopers did reuniting the city of Jerusalem. And only when I was a young adult I started realizing the miracle of the reunification of the city after 2,000 years. When I travel the world and speak to many people around the world, many people don't understand. And they ask me, how does it work here? How do people, after 2,000 years, come back to their land, reunite the city? What moves us Jewish people to be so committed to the city of Jerusalem? And how come we're so frantically working to build it and to secure it and to make sure it is an inclusive city in spite of all the challenges we have? The best way to explain that, and I share people, let's go back 3,000 years to the time where the people of Israel came back from the land of Egypt after hundreds of years of slavery, where each one of our tribes, the 12 tribes, had a piece of land, a way of life and skills, except the city of Jerusalem, that by design was built between Benjamin and Judah tribes, and it did not belong to any tribe, and King David built it in such a way that all people from all tribes, Jews and non-Jews alike, came to worship God. And when they entered the gates of Yerushalayim, the holy city, they felt a feeling of belonging, a feeling of togetherness, an inclusive, together feeling that made all people friends. And when something was successful in our city, it automatically became a new de facto standard around the world, because if it works in Jerusalem, it means that all the pilgrims going back home used to say to their friends, hey, guess what's new in the world? Because it's new in Jerusalem. Jerusalem created new standards. And what I find as mayor is that if you're committed to the inclusiveness of the city, once you really deeply understand that we have to catch up and treat our residents equally and make sure we take accountability and responsibility to quality of life for all of our constituencies, when we understand, think of a conflict. Jerusalem has it big time. We have practically almost all conflict you could think of between secular and religious, Jews, Muslims, and Christians. The biggest, by the way, conflicts are within the religions, between Muslims and Jews and Christians and Christians. Yet, when you understand that the conflicts in our city, it's not a bug, it's a feature. It's a city that by design once holds all the different constituencies. All day, every day, our challenges is how to make our lives work together in spite of the challenges, and make the city work better within the framework of status quo and within the framework of build it, be more considerate, and make the city work better. In the last few years, Jerusalem is doing very well. In high tech, for example, our city moved from being nowhere to 35 on the global list in 2015. Last year we climbed to 25. This year we had the biggest ever acquisition of any Israeli company, Mobileye, that was acquired by Intel for $15 billion. And our high tech is scaling at a rate of 14% year after year in the last few years. Also, tonight we're going to have a major ceremony next to the Jaffa Gate. Jerusalem is going through a cultural renaissance, which dramatically increased tourism. And from 9,500 hotel rooms we had 8 years ago, we're in the process of building 17,000. We are today at 12,000, and in the next 3 years we'll complete 17,000 hotel rooms to make Jerusalem. Yes, indeed. And all that. And the significant amount of help we are getting, and by the way, we need much, much more, is all due to the support we're getting from Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I want to commend and bless him and all the ministers, Yariv Levin, and the rest of the ministers for supporting our growth in Yerushalayim. Tomorrow we have a very important guest, the president of the most powerful country in the world. And we'd really like to see the president understand what makes Jerusalem work. And understand that while we're a country seeking peace, we know where the limitations are and where the red lines are that we will never agree. One of them, of course, is maintaining Jerusalem as the united, undivided capital of the Jewish people forever. This is part of the vision of how Jerusalem was designed 3,000 years ago. It's also a practical issue. We know that 52% of the Arab population in our city now does not want the city divided. It's a big majority today, because about a fourth don't care. And we know that year after year, when we are committed to closing gaps and making Jerusalem work better, it actually shows and demonstrates how Jerusalem is starting and continuing to fulfill its role as the holy city, the center of the world. And unfortunately, I sometimes hear many people maybe whisper to the president's ear with respect to the moving the embassy. I heard one claim that once the embassy will move, we may have a round of violence. The answer to that is very simple. A year and a half ago, we had a round of violence with no reason. Just incitements that had nothing to do with reality. Meaning that if somebody wants violence, he doesn't need a reason. And indeed, it happened to us just a year and a half ago. We would never have Israel. We would have never united the city of Jerusalem, God forbid, if we were concerned from violence or concerned to do the right thing. Us and America should do the right thing and not give terror or violence any gain and no consideration. Just do the right thing and recognize Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish people. I also heard another claim that maybe there's a window of opportunity to create a peace deal with the Palestinians. Now, Israel demonstrated in the past that we know how to create a deal with Egypt, the vicious, biggest enemy we had in the Middle East. We similarly did a deal with Jordan. When somebody on the other side came, recognized the right of existence of Israel, and sat down to seek a potential deal. Now, by stuttering and not moving the embassy to the city of Jerusalem, why should the Palestinians agree? And they unfortunately do not agree with our existence. I think it's very, very clear. There's no deal. No deal, God forbid, dividing the city of Jerusalem. And therefore, moving the embassy, if anything, will bring peace faster rather than later. So any hiccups or any stuttering in moving the embassy and not recognizing the city of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel only gives the Palestinians more time to play around and not come and face reality and seek peace deal with us. So I believe, if I could give my advice to the President of the United States, is when you really understand how this region works, you have to make sure the Palestinians understand that recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel by the United States, moving the embassy, and understanding how this region works, looking back at our long history of 3,000 years, if anything, will promote peace and not further it away, further the peace away. In spite of all that, I want to congratulate and welcome our dear President, President Trump, and wish him and all of us a fruitful visit tomorrow. I know that Jerusalemites are sometimes moaning and groaning, traffic, this and that. It is a meaningful trip, And I would really like to see him and Prime Minister Netanyahu and all of our government seek good deals that could promote Jerusalem and Israel as a whole and the relationship with the United States. I would like to say just last thing about Arutz Sheva. I want to thank Arutz Sheva. It's not trivial, and I do not take for granted that Arutz Sheva creates events like this. An event like this with Mike Huckabee, our dear friend, and many friends from the United States. Real friends of Israel. And we see that in tough times, not only in good times. Mike, I want to commend you for your friendship and your love to our people. It shows. We need many friends like you, and I want to commend you and thank you for your friendship. Folks, the last thing I have to say is Mazal Tov Yerushalayim. It's a huge celebration. We have lots of work still to do, but we should be very proud of what Jerusalem and Israel has accomplished in the last 50 years. So, Chag Sameach Yerushalayim, God bless you, and I'm sorry that I'll have to leave very soon.